everybody, welcome back. So in the previous video we looked at a couple of predicate functions on an array as well as the for each method on the array as well, and basically demonstrated what those things did. In this video I'm going to cover two more methods that are on the array, and they're both around basically filtering or changing the contents of an array and basically producing a new array out of that. So I'm going to jump over to the code now, and basically what I'm going to demonstrate first is what is known as the map function, right? Or basically the map function on the array object. So I'm going to have a sequence of numbers. I'm going to put it inside of a variable called sequence, like so, and this will just be an array, just as we've seen before, and I'm just going to go from 1 to 9. So we'll just quickly add this in. Now, what I'm going to do for the example of this is I'm going to create a new array from this sequence, and basically how it will be is that for every odd number that's in this sequence, I'm going to create a new sequence where that number is multiplied by 3, and for every even number in that sequence is going to be multiplied by 2. Okay? So that's the first thing I'm going to start with, and I achieve this using what is known as the map function, and it looks something like this. So I go sequence.map, right, and inside of here I just place a function like I have in previous lessons. So I'm going to create my function, I'll just call it map array for the simple part of this exercise. Okay. Now before this I'm going to create my function, so I'm going to go function map array. And for this one, I'm going to pass in the value and the index. Now, if you didn't see my previous video, all these functions have the same number of arguments. You have the value, which is the current value in the iteration. You have the current index in that iteration. And then there's the last one you can actually pass in an array. I'm not going to use the array for the purpose of this one because I don't really need to. The reason why I'm going to use the index is I'm going to show you what the value will ultimately be at that index. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create basically a predicate to determine if this is actually an odd or an even number. And you would have seen this in the previous video. So I'm just going to go var predicate result is equal to the value modulus 2 is equal to 1, right? That determines if we're odd or not. Then I'm going to throw an if condition in here. So if predicate value or predicate result. Now remembering that this is a truthy, so if in this case we got a value of 0, meaning a false, well, it would be false here, so it would fall into the else part. So we're saying if it's true, we're going to multiply some value by 3 and produce that as the output. So just to get started, I'm going to get the output variable here. I'm just going to call it converted value. And I'm just going to set it to 0 because it's going to be set. So here, I'm going to go converted value is equal to the value times 3. Okay. As we said, this is an odd number. I want all odd numbers to be multiplied by 3. Else, so now we know it's an even number, I want the converted value to be equal to the value times 2. Right, and then finally, I'm going to return the converted value. Right, so that's all the minimum requirements you need for the function in order for it to work. However, I wanted to record as part of a console output here, basically what the index we're on and what the value of that number is at that index, just so we can clarify and visualize the fact that it's actually working. So here I'm going to write the value of, and we'll go space value, so the current value at index, and then I'll go on to the new line here, at index, we'll go index plus will be converted to a new value of, and we'll grab the converted value. So all this is going to do is print out what the old value was at that index, and basically what the new value is going to be at that index. Alright, and it will do that for each iteration in this array up here. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to quickly basically print out two things down here. I'm going to go console.log. I'm going to print out the sequence. Alright, so that's the first step. And then the second thing is I want the mapped array to come out as a result of this. So console.log mapped array. So first thing you'll see it printed out is, well, it should actually be this, because this should happen before the mapping. Right, so you'll see an original sequence, which will be your 1 to 9 here, and then basically the mapping will take place. You'll see each entry of the mapping here, and then the final result. Okay, so let's just quickly try that. So I'm going to node, map, and filter, and there you go. So we've got the first data set, which is 1 to 9, and then for each iteration, I'm saying the original value is 1 and index 0 will be converted to 3. That's an odd number, so it's times 3. 2 becomes 4 because it's only times 2 because it's even, and then 3 at 9, 4 at 8, and so on and so forth, right? So that's essentially what the map function can do for you. It allows you to manipulate the original data set and create a new data set in any way you want, okay? So you could even say at this point, you know, instead of it being every odd number has to be times 3, you could say whenever there's an odd number, put a name of Daryl in there. Otherwise, return a name of James or something. So it doesn't necessarily have to be number for number. It can be anything. You can return anything back from this result set. I just happened to make it simple and did a number conversion. Okay. Other functions that take a single parameter, a value parameter, can also be used, such as like, for example, if I want to go square root map, so square root map equals sequence, oops, can't spell, dot map, you can go square root, math dot square root, right? And I can print this out as well. So if I go console.log square root map, we're just using an inbuilt function that's part of JavaScript. This is part of the math library, right? But it still applies because the value, which is the first thing coming in here, should still work, right? So let's quickly just check this out. There you go. You get a list of square root of 1 is 1, square root of 2 is 1.2141, blah, blah, blah. And then you get lots of them up to 3, right? So square root of 3 is 9, so on and so forth. Square root of 9 is 3. So you can use a number of different functions to make that work. It will still work exactly the same. Okay, so that is map. Okay, so I'm going to quickly get rid of the square root thing because that was just to demonstrate an example. Now, the second function I want to talk about in this video is something known as the filter function. And the filter function is quite simple. Basically, you pass it an array and you create a function that filters out or filters in certain items in that array. So for the purpose of this video, I saw that we had two numbers above 20. So I'm just going to grab these two numbers, okay? I'm not going to grab any other numbers in the sequence. I only want those two numbers. So to do that, I'm going to create a function here called more than 20, like so. And we'll have a value and we'll have an index as before, so we can see the indexes that satisfy that particular predicate. So I'm going to put a if value is higher than 20, not 30, like so. We'll just return true. Otherwise, we'll return false. Alright, so pretty easy, simple stuff there. And then inside of here, I'm going to log out as part of the console. We'll log out the value of the value at index the next line I'll put index, and then I'll put is more than 20, and then I'll put its its value is, and then I'll pass the value. Right. So it's just going to print out whatever the index number is and whatever the number is, right, that's being filtered out here. And then down here, we just go var filtered array is equal to mapped array dot map, passing in more than 20. Right. And then lastly, console dot log the filtered array. So, just to give you an idea, when the value here is returned true inside of this function, the one's used in the filter statement, it means that the value should be part of the new set. It's filtered into the equation. If you return false, it means that that item should not be part of the new set. You're filtering that out. Okay, so that's the distinction here. When it's above 20, we're filtering it in. When it's below or equal to 20, we're filtering it out by returning true and false. So by result, here we should get the 21 and 27, and then this should also print out the indexes in which those two numbers live. So let's quickly check that. I'm going to clear the screen, whoops, and run it again. And now you'll see down here, what have I done? I have returned the wrong thing. My bad. What have I? One sec. Oh, I called map, sorry. Supposed to filter. Supposed to call filter here, not map. It was mapping the results, not the actual numbers. Okay. So now, finally, now we get 21 and 27. Alright? And if you can see up here, we've got the value at index 6. So this is the 6th position here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright? Is more than 20, which it is, 21. The value is 21. And then the value at index 8, which happens to be the last index here, is more than 20. Its value is 27. So as a result, it's giving us an array of two numbers. Cool. So there are two methods I wanted to show in this video. The last thing I want to quickly show here, and something that people may already know, but basically you can chain these things together. Alright? So we can have a map and then we can have a filter. So the way we can do this is, for example, if I change this to that, for example, right, what you're going to see at the moment is that it won't return anything because we're all under 20. Right? So it's an empty array. But we want the mapping to take place before we do the filter here. So what we can do, and this is the way you normally see it, right? You do something like this. You call map, passing in the map array. You know that's going to output something that has the mapped values, you know, the ones basically in here, right? Then you can chain it by calling .filter. So then that'll take whatever's here and it will basically filter it down. So this is almost the same, right? Rather than creating a separate property, you know, to filter on, you can use the one property and then map it and then filter it, and it chains through. Alright, so let's quickly check to make sure that still works. And as you can see down here, it still works. Okay, so this is quite a common practice that you'll see when you're working on a number of things that are manipulating the one initial object source, which in this case happens to be an array. But this is something that's quite common. Okay, you may see this from time to time. So this would be like your get your data from the REST call, for example, map it to an object, right? And once you've mapped it to an object, you may want to filter those objects out after the fact. So And then at that point, you use the filter function, right? So that's kind of the idea. Anyway, I'm going to end it there, guys. In the next video, we're going to look at 2 more basic functions on the array, which basically reduce the contents inside of an array and produce something that's a little bit smaller. They're known as reduce and reduce write. So I'll see you in the next video.